Putting together a cast for a show is always a challenge because you not only cast each role the best you can, but look at the sort of the big picture and see how everyone looks together. Lost was an especially large challenge because the cast was 14 people. We had 3 weeks to cast the whole show. Not only cast the roles, but also respond to the pages that were being written. Like, we were figuring out who would be in the show as we were writing the script.
There were so many inherent challenges in, like, a TV show that takes place on an island. Is it going to be Gilligan's Island? Is it going to be Survivor? All of these issues were sort of informing the process.
We were sort of on a daily basis saying, okay, there's another new cast member, there's someone else we've just come up with, or this person's going to be, you know, a permanent cast, this person's probably going to be a guest, no, it's going to be a permanent, you know, and saw all these actors, many of whom inspired the characters.
We didn't have a script. It was an outline and some idea of where we were going.
So Damon would spend his days writing the script, and his nights he would be writing sides, which are, you know, scenes that the actors would read.
The search for Kate was like the first thing that April was sort of assigned to do. Yoonjin Kim came in and read for Kate, and she was fantastic, and we were looking over her resume, and there were all these movies in Korean. Like, oh, do you speak Korean? And she's like, oh yeah, I was actually raised in Korea. I speak fluent Korean. And in fact, not to toot my own horn, but I'm a massive movie star in Korea. To which we kind of said, like, well, she's got to be in the show now.
You don't seem afraid at all. I don't understand that.
Do you like it? Good job.
It's okay.
We thought she'd be perfect as a character who didn't speak English and who, over time, we start to examine her relationship with her husband, and we learned that she actually does speak English. That role suddenly became a regular on the show.
제가 영어를 못해요.
After the audition, my agent called and said, JJ is going to write a role for you, and he's figuring out, you know, who to cast to play your husband. So, like, in a day or two, they already had this new character developing and another character to sort of complete Sun's character.
단추가 열렸네. 채워라. 빨리.
It was a really interesting experience because when we first got cast, I didn't know what the full script was going to be. And so we had to take a leap of faith and accept the jobs, you know, trusting JJ and Damon and the rest of the gang. And, you know, it was quite an adventure. And it was especially hard for me because this was the first time I've ever acted in Korean. And so, you know, I had to brush up my language skills, and I hadn't spoken regularly since, you know, high school with my parents. So it was a really interesting challenge.
여기 음식이에요. 한번 하나 들어보세요.
이거 성게예요. 아주 맛있어요. 먹으면 살아갈 수 있어요. 한번 먹어보세요.
What, that? What is that?
우리 모두에게 충분해요. 한번 잡숴보세요.
Dude, guess what? I'm starving, but I'm not nearly that hungry.
No way, no. I think Jorge might have been the second person to come in.
He was the first one we knew we were going to cast, because we didn't bring anybody else in for the part. Because there was no character. You know, I mean, that character was essentially created for Jorge Garcia.
My Curb Your Enthusiasm had just aired, and I'd walked in, so they kind of knew who I was because they had seen it. And I went in and I was reading Sawyer Sides. I just kind of did the Sawyer Sides just the way I would do it.
Jorge Garcia, I can be the nice guy if you want. But we both know, just be an act.
Please take it off.
What do you give me if
It's not yours, goddammit! Give it to me! Give it to me! It's not yours!
Stop.
It's not yours! You don't deserve it! What do you
We loved him. He was just like spectacular. And my recollection was I had never seen him before. I'd seen that episode the night before, and he came in, and I was like, oh my God, that's the guy. And it was, I mean, it wasn't even a question. We didn't read anyone else for the part of Hurley.
It was about finding great actors and then finding a place for them in this piece. And, you know, JJ has an amazing eye, and Damon, I thought, for, you know, first time, you know, creator, also just had a really great take on things. But I think the idea that you could find Jorge and be like, he's great. How do we figure out how to get him in this show?
Hurley.
Whereas in another pilot, you know, it's like if he isn't right for the 5 parts you're reading, he's out.
Saeed was not in that first outline. Hurley was certainly not in that first outline. Sun and Jin were not. And there were other characters that were in the outline that were sort of very nebulous.
When I first auditioned for the show, I had just little pieces, just little scenes. Some of them were in the pilot, some of them weren't.
Could you ask any more questions?
I'm making conversation. That's what you have to do, ask questions.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of into my own thing here, so how about you take a time out until Daddy gets back, okay?
We wanted someone who had that kind of, dare I say, Paris Hilton quality of someone who was sort of like, whatever kind of a feel. And we saw a lot of girls. But she couldn't just be shallow, because we knew that the storyline was going to require a little bit more to go on.
As if I'm gonna start eating chocolate.
Shannon, we may be here for a while. I was in the car with someone, and my manager calls. Typical, like, LA day, you know, your manager calls, hey, I have this script. I haven't read it, but you should check it out. It's a pilot. And at that point, I had said, you know what, I just don't think this year I'm gonna read a pilot. I don't think I can put myself through it again. I just don't want to do it. Where I get home, look in the fax machine, it says J.J. Abrams in Hawaii. And I called her and I said, hey, get me in a room with him, please, 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 please.
As if I'm going to start eating chocolate.
Well, interfering with your eating disorders is not something that I aspire to. I mean, I hope you know that. It'll be a couple days for the rest of you to find us, and possibly 3, and then you're looking at 72 hours
Thank
or
you.
more.
I know how long 3 days is, and as if we're not going to get rescued.
I'm not saying we're not. Just looking out of the plane when we went down, there's really nothing out there. We're 6 hours out of Sydney. There's nothing.
I was actually working up in Edmonton at the time, in Canada, in the many feet of snow with freezing feet, finding out about this, and I wasn't able to come down to meet on it. I ended up sending a tape.
My best friend, her name's Ruth. She's the greatest. We've known each other since we were 6. She's funny as hell, and she's married to this amazing guy. We met him the same night. I was actually kind of pissed that he liked her.
Emily was really Australian. That was one thing we were really looking for because the plane was leaving from Sydney. It was also someone who could have the youth and the sweetness, but also someone who looked like they'd had a life.
Morning delivery.
Oh, you're sweet. Thanks.
Well, I figured in your condition, with the extra baggage, you know.
Well, I can still walk.
Barely. Anyway, I worry about you out here, you know. It's very sunny.
I was offered mainly fantasy-based characters, elves, pixies. So a contemporary character was important for me, and someone who had a little layers, you know, and edge to him.
Charlie?
What are you doing in the bathroom?
What? He was pretty true to what he ended up being, except he was much older. He was constructed as a has-been rocker who been a big hit in the 80s, but was now washed up and had a heroin addiction.
I went in with sides for Sawyer, for Josh Holloway, but my agent said, chances are you're probably not going to read for that because it's not going to be suitable. But they're kind of doing a relatively open casting call at this point.
My name's Dominic Monaghan.
Hey,
Hey.
how's the arm?
Oh, the breaking ball's probably going to suffer, but I think I could give you a few innings.
Fire's going pretty good if you want to come over.
I'm okay here, thanks.
I don't think we should tell anyone about what we saw.
What did we see?
When Dominic Monaghan came in, he was just such a good actor that we thought, well, you know, you can be a young has-been.
Excuse me. Are you sure you want to be smoking with the plane stuff?
Sure, you want me to shove my foot up your ass?
Sawyer, in the original version of the outline, he was sort of a Prada suit-wearing, slick kind of con man, like a la like Gary Glenn Ross, like a Mamet kind of style guy.
I go to do the reading for JJ and Damon, and on the breakdown it said, slick city con man, and he's from Buffalo.
You want to know about me?
Oh, yeah. Sure, if you like.
I was born in Pittsburgh. Father died when I was 2, mother when I was 4. Moved to Buffalo. Lived with my aunt and uncle. She sat around on her fat ass all day while he ran scams.
About halfway through it, I got stuck. Couldn't figure it out, so I just kicked a chair into the wall. And then it all came back to me, so I finished out the monologue, and I think that's probably what got me the job. They were like, ooh, yeah, we're looking for a salty kind of guy like that.
He was not at all that guy, but he was so watchable that we're like, okay, forget the fact that he's a Prada suit wearing like slick guy. Like this guy's sort of more of a feral, like, you know, southern, you know, equally intelligent, but a different kind of guy entirely. So let's rewrite the character around him.
Come on, let's go. That's it. It's over. Come on. That's it. I think of this friend. You want some more of me, boy? Tell everyone what you told me. Tell them that I crashed the plane.
We knew early on that it was going to be an international cast. We were going to have this international airliner. It wasn't going to be a bunch of Americans. And I had recently worked with an actor named Naveen Andrews on a ABC television show that lasted 6 episodes called The Beast, and he was just a standout. And he did one read, and it was a marriage right from the start.
How do you know how to do all that?
I was a military communications officer.
Yeah? You ever see battle?
Oh, yes. I fought in the Gulf War.
No way. I have a buddy fought over there. He was in the 104th Airborne. Were you in the Air Force, Army?
The Republican Guard.
When we started looking for this character, it's like he was the guy we wanted. Now, we did look through a lot of other guys. We were even surprised he would do it.
I just went in and met JJ and Damon and Brian and just did the scene. And it wasn't until I was cast that I got a script. So, you know, from the outset, there wasn't that much preparation I could do. All I knew was that he was from Iraq and he'd obviously been in the army.
Mr. Locke said a miracle happened to him.
Yeah, well, a miracle happened to all of us, Walt. We survived the plane crash.
Harold Perrineau happened to be in town doing Top Dog Underdog with another wonderful New York actor. And when we were starting to cast the role of Michael and Walt, it was a natural thing to, like, get him in.
In the comic books in Spanish. You, read Spanish?
No. I found it.
Look, man. We need some help here, all right? I don't know how to do this yet.
The first time I met Damon and JJ and all those guys, I was a little skeptical about the whole process. You know, there's a pilot about a plane crash and people in Hawaii. And as it went on, they started talking about this project more and more, and I was like, huh, this is kind of interesting. So I go to do my audition and read the little bit of information that I have, and then JJ says, okay, well, let's think about this. And I go, oh, okay, well, let's think about that. And I try it again, and then he goes, well, what about this? And then suddenly it kicked in my head, like he did some Jedi mind thing. Like suddenly I got it, like, oh my God, there's so much to do here. There's so much to fill in, there's so much. And they started talking about all these ideas that they had.
How's your son? Well, yeah, I think he'll be all right. How old is he? 9, 10? 10.
What is it, like checkers?
Not really. It's a better game than checkers. Do you play checkers with your pop?
No. I was in Australia with my mom.
You have no accent.
Yeah, we move a lot. She got sick. She died, so.
Malcolm had been in Antoine Fisher. He played him as a 5-year-old and was very impressed with the performance from him in that. But we did do due diligence. We saw a lot of kids, a couple of the other boys who had been doing a lot of acting. And we brought 3 boys to the studio and network. But Malcolm was, for us, the strongest choice.
I live in Australia with my mom. She got sick. She died a couple of weeks ago.
You're having a bad month.
JJ, when he told me about Lost, we talked on the telephone. He told me while I was working with him on Alias that we would do something together. JJ said, there's not going to be a lot for you in the pilot, the first couple episodes, he said, but your character's going to develop and you're going to be happy with it. And feeling like I do about JJ, I said, I'll take it. I took it on faith alone.
We hunt.
Okay, Mr. Locke, what is it that we're hunting?
In the outline, it was basically like, Jack is a doctor. He's our hero, you know. And in the outline, Jack died midway through. So we were like, don't worry about Jack, April. Like, he's not going to be a series regular.
Someone who actually I was talking with about Lost before we actually wrote the script was Michael Keaton, who I love and who I wanted to work with for a long time. You know, I don't even think there was ever a script sent to him, though, because by the time I was sort of ready to give it to him, we decided we were going to keep him as a regular in the show and not as a guest star, you know, in the pilot, and he wasn't going to die. But he wasn't interested in doing a series. He just wanted to sort of do it in the pilot, to do a kind of guest star cameo.
From the beginning, from the very first time Damon walked into the room and we started talking about it, there was no doubt that Jack died. They went into the cockpit. The cockpit starts shaking around. They all flee the cockpit. They're running down the jungle and fleeing from whatever this thing is that's making all the sound. And out of nowhere, Jack is snatched up and yanked back.
Where the hell's Jack? Where is he? I don't know. How can you not know?
Kate and Charlie are like hiding. The two of them go back and they find Jack's body perched in a tree, and it later became the pilot.
The character of Jack died about halfway through, which we did because we thought it would be an interesting, unexpected, you know, kind of story turn.
The big psych out is the audience will be totally invested in this guy, and then he'll get killed in the middle of the show, so people will be like, oh my God, the show, I never know what's going to happen next.
But what it did really was just anger the people who read the script. They felt like they were going along with the ride, and they, you know, were into the story, and that the death of that character sort of took them out of it, and it made them sort of resent the story.
He died without a doubt until a week before we started shooting, when Steve McPherson, who was the head of Touchstone at the time, was adamant about Jack living. His point of view was, you're asking your audience to have faith in this character and to believe in him, and you don't want to take that away. You want an anchor, and someone you can believe in. And Jack is that character.
You know, from a network television standpoint and from a series standpoint, it just didn't make any sense to kill Jack off. And, you know, JJ pretty quickly embraced that and understood why that wasn't a good idea, and came up with a brilliant fix of how he could be in jeopardy and really still be the center of this show, but survive, and obviously he has survived.
And that changed sort of the second half of the story, but at the same time, you know, it was the right decision to make. And that's when we said to April, okay, we're going to need a Jack now.
Excuse me. Did you ever use a needle?
What?
Did you ever, patch a pair of jeans?
I made the drapes in my apartment.
Well, that's fantastic. Listen, do you have a second? I need some help.
JJ, when I met him for the first time, you know, I hadn't read the script because he wasn't letting anyone read the script at that point, and I could tell he was like really kind of immediately interested in me, and he started telling me what the first like 10 minutes of the script were. And JJ gets so like, you know, very visual and very animated and very excited when he pitches like ideas and story, and I just knew that it was going to be incredibly cool and something that I would be very, very excited to do. It's the kind of thing that's right up my alley, just on a sort of genre and tonal level.
Excuse me. Did you ever use a needle?
We probably read, like, you know, 75 girls, women, you know, different sizes, shapes, ethnicities, ages, everybody for Kate. It was just, nothing was really clicking.
Well, because Jack was going to die. There had been a plan that she was going to be the one who's leading everybody. And that was, we needed someone who had that power.
She was, in the initial outline, sort of constructed as a woman who was not at all a fugitive. She'd been recently married, and her husband went to go to the bathroom when the tail section flew off. So her entire arc was, I'm now separated from my husband, I believe he's alive.
And then we got a tape from Canada, from the casting director up there. She said, you know, you take a look at this girl. I took a look at her, and I rushed the tape over.
We would get these tapes from April after sort of casting sessions, and, you know, she would flag certain people that she thought were good. We were sitting in JJ's office, I remember. He had the remote in his hand, and I was on the phone talking to somebody else about something else. And I remember looking over at JJ, and I saw him first, and he just went like this, and like took his finger off the remote, and then I looked over at the TV, and it was Evangeline. And she just turned around and did the scene. And
excuse me.
There was just something about her. We'd never seen her before. She had this sort of confidence and a vulnerability both at the same time. He literally turned to me and said, like, I think that's her. So we called April up, said, get her on a plane, bring her down here. Evangeline came in the next day.
Then she came in and she gave a spectacular reading. JJ gave her some direction, and it was like this weird moment. I remember vividly sitting next to Damon, and we both looked at each other, and there was no doubt that that was Kate. And not only did she look exactly like we had always envisioned Kate, but her performance and her adjustments from JJ's direction were spot on, like no one else had been.
I've been in Sydney. Sydney? What do you do there? I am a junior VP of Marketing and Business Development for Pratt Harris.
What's Pratt Harris?
We're the leading providers of business logic integration solutions.
Well, that will come in handy here.
I had spent 2 weeks sitting in a hotel room, sweating bullets and twiddling my thumbs, waiting to hear if my visa would come through. So already I was in a weird headspace where I didn't know anybody in LA. I didn't know if I was getting the job, and I didn't know if I did get the job, if I was up for the job.
People who are Canadian or from any country for that matter, they have to have, I guess it's called an O1 visa to work in the United States. And if you have an extensive body of work, if you're an actor who's worked a lot and people know you, the INS people understand why that person is important to the process and stuff. It's like they've worked, you need them, whatever. But somebody who's done no work, they're well, why do you need this person? How do you know they're going to be good? Why can't an American actor play that role?
We had to send her back to Canada and hope that we could get this visa through.
All of the legal at ABC and at Disney was trying to get her into the union, into the Screen Actors Guild, and to get her visa cleared to work in the United States. We were scheduled to start shooting on a Thursday, and Evangeline Lilly was supposed to be there bright and early the first day of shooting in LA, and we were only going to be shooting in LA for a few days before we headed off to Hawaii.
We had no choice but to start shooting.
The cameras rolled. JJ started shooting. They did the production schedule so that Evie's character of Kate would not work for a few days. So at least we had another couple days where we could try to work on it. The contingency plan was to keep casting. It was like, let's see if there's anybody else.
That Thursday, the day we started shooting, Tom Sherman and myself spent the entire day auditioning actresses to replace Evangeline Lilly.
We're sitting there, reading people and auditioning women, kind of going, what are we, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And I have a BlackBerry. I kept checking my BlackBerry to see if there was any emails from anybody. And after about the 17th woman came in to read that morning, I got an email that said Evangeline's visa has cleared. And, we all jumped up screaming in the room.
We got the word the day before I had to start work that I actually was hired and I got the visa and it came through.
Truly, it's as if Evie stepped out of the shell, fully made. I mean, she's brilliant, she's subtle, she's intuitive.
I sort of look at every character on Lost as their own show, so that every week we'll sort of alternate and see another person's series, and it ultimately allows us to give a singularity to what is ultimately an ensemble show.